How is that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay.
Ajahn.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Good afternoon,
Good
Ajahn.
afternoon. Okay.
Yes, maybe request for the 3 refuges and 5 precepts,
You may
Ajahn.
request, and I will even give it. So that's goodness. Let's do that. As always, I will start out, and then you can say things after me. So you're going to request first, okay? Please request.
Okay, you can
Go for it.
request in Pali together.
Mm.
Let's request Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yachama Dutiyampi Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yachama Tatiyampi Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yachama.
Okay. Yang ahang vadame tang vadeta.
Ama Bante.
Okay. All right, so here we go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Okay. Good. Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Saranagamanang nittitang.
Ama Bante.
Anatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinnadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majjapamadhatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majjapamadhatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti, silena bhoga sampada, silena nibbutiং yanti, tasma silang visota ye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Ooh, excellent. Very good. Okay, here.
Ajahn, do you
Yes.
want to do the reflections on the triple gem?
Do I want to do it? I can do it. Whether I want or not, I can do it. So no, very happy to do it. So let's do the so this is the recollection of the triple gem as it is laid down in the suttas. This is how the Buddha recommended that we reflect on the Buddha Dhamma and Sangha. So here we go. Okay. Uh, Arahang Samma.
No,
It's a go.
Itipiso
Itipiso Bhagava.
Bhagava
I can't see.
Arahang.
Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vija Charana Sampano Sugato Lokavidu Anutaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sata Deva Manusana Buddho Bhagavati Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanaiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujjapatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyayapatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samicchipatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidang Chattari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punyaketa Lokasati. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Metta.
Metta Sutta? Okay, all right. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Metta Sutta in English.
English.
This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness.
One should
Sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay. So what next, Eiling, here? You are the boss.
Yeah.
What now?
Dhamma talk.
Dhamma talk now. Okay, Dhamma talk now. Okay. Whatever you say. So, okay, Dhamma talk. Yeah. So we just go for it then.
Pilgrimage to India, gaining confidence in the triple journey.
Okay, yeah. So we will see whether the talk is going to be about that or something else. We'll see what happens as we go along here. Yes. You never know before it kind of. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, so welcome everyone. Nice to see you all. And many of you have just been on the pilgrimage and some of you have not. But it's nice to kind of recap a little bit for those of you who were there and maybe kind of inspire some of you who were not there on the pilgrimage and see if next time maybe you would like to check it out yourself. Is it going to be a next time, Eiling, or is this the last time? It's uncertain. So uncertain, right? It could very well be the last time. Yes, maybe. I say maybe, but you say yes. Okay.
But Ajahn Brahmali maybe, but can be led by other monks.
Other monks, okay. Or lay people, or nuns, or yeah. Don't know, yeah. Anyone who kind of has the ability and kind of to inspire people. Anyway, so just come back. And I would say it was very nice. We met some people everywhere, which was also very good. I think personally, I think it was very successful. Yeah, it was the best pilgrimage I've been on so far, and I've been on a few. That's good. And we had a kind of exciting time. We went to some out-of-the-way places, climbing over the rocks, putting everyone in great danger. And I thought the Singaporeans, being like a city people, are going to be really frightened and scared, and they're going to never forgive me for leading them astray far into the wilderness. But actually, people were very good, and I think people enjoyed it. Yeah, we're doing things a bit different from the normal kind of things, and it was actually very nice. And people were very, very easy with that, and so that was very, very nice. And one of the benefits of going to some of the out-of-the-places is that they are often more quiet. They're often more peaceful. You go to the so-called holy places, and it's like a circus. It's really happening there. Yeah, you go there at 5 in the morning or 9 in the evening or 1 p.m. or whatever time is always pretty much the same noise level, 24/7. Well, not 24. At night they kind of turn off the system for a while, but otherwise it's like kind of continuous sort of high noise. Sometimes the noise is nice, sometimes not so nice. Sometimes it's like Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. That's really nice. That's kind of this Indian professional chanter who chants the Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Yeah, much better than most people can do. It's really nice. And then some kind of senior monk from some country, Thailand or Cambodia or whatever, grabs the microphone and broadcasts his voice over the entire Bodh Gaya, but just had no clue about chanting. A terrible voice. And everyone in the kind of 2 kilometers radius has to listen to this voice of this senior monk. This is the downside with these hierarchical systems. If you are a senior monk, you have to grab that microphone regardless of what happens. That's the way it is. Even if your voice sounds like a crow, it doesn't make any difference. So that is both the charm and the downside of it. It's charming because it's not so serious. If people go there, they have a lot of faith, and you have to tune into it in the right way. And when you tune into the fact, everyone who goes there go there because of faith, because they are Buddhists, because they are practitioners of the path, and yet they go because of this positive feeling they want to generate in their life. Once you tune into that, it becomes very beautiful. It doesn't matter if they chant off key. It doesn't matter if they are a bit noisy. It doesn't matter if they do endless rituals, yeah, which some people do. Actually, it's all kind of sweet when you know where it's coming from. And that is kind of the beauty of it. And not only is it beautiful because you know where people are coming from, but it's like people from everywhere around the world are coming from the same place. Yeah, there are people there from, well, from Singapore, yeah. We know that because most of our group was from Singapore, or from the BGF in Malaysia, some from Australia, one person from the UK, and Sri Lanka, right? And Indonesia, I think there was one person. So there was kind of just this conglomeration from just from our group. And then, of course, there were people from everywhere around the world. There was lots and lots of Tibetans there. Indian Buddhists, Buddhists from Thailand, from Cambodia, from Myanmar, from Sikkim. We met Buddhists from Sikkim. Isn't that kind of nice? This little state in India. And when you are on pilgrimage, everyone is very friendly. It's true. Yeah, usually people kind of meet people think, well, they're all grumpy, whatever in Singapore. Yeah, in the big cities, people are always grumpy. Have you noticed that? Yeah, that's kind of what it's like, except for BGF, here at the BF. At the BF, people are actually pretty, very nice. At least to me, they're very nice. And that's sweet. But when you go on pilgrimage, it's like everyone leaves the city behind. They leave all the grumpiness behind, and everyone is so friendly here. And so I would go around waving to people, saying hello, hello to everyone. And everyone says hello back. Yeah, and everyone waves back. And that's kind of, I didn't wave all the time, of course, but some of the times when it felt right. So very kind of openness of heart and kindness and friendliness to everyone. And that's really kind of warming. Yeah, it's kind of heartwarming when you see that. And so it opens up kind of different avenues and things. So that is just some of the kind of immediate impressions. I'll come back to these impressions later on. But I want you to start with where we normally should start when we talk about pilgrimage, and that is the Buddha's words about pilgrimage. Yeah, because the Buddha said, when after I pass away, our Venerable Ananda goes to the Buddha and said, what shall we do? After the rainy season, usually when we are kind of finished practicing for 3 months or whatever on our own, usually we come to pay respect to the Buddha and to kind of the senior monastics who are worthy of respect. But now you're going to pass away. Yeah, it's almost like he's saying, don't pass away, as if the Buddha had much choice. He was getting old, body was falling apart. If you have to pass away, you have to pass away. Yeah, you go to hospital, your elderly relative, they're about to pass away, and you say, don't die. What are they going to do? They're still going to die, whether you say don't die or not, doesn't make any difference. Yeah, dying just happens. That's part of life. And so the Buddha too was human, and so he too had to die. And so he says to Venerable Ananda, well, after I pass away, you should go to the 4 places to gain that inspiration in the Dhamma. And of course, you know what they are, yeah? Place where he was born, yeah? Place where he found awakening, place where he gave the first discourse, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and the last one, the place where he died. Yes, these are the 4 places. So these are, places where we go to gain inspiration after the Buddha has passed away. You can't see the Buddha anymore, but you can do the second best thing here. And so this is what this is about. And that idea of finding inspiration in these places is very similar to the idea of Buddha Nusati, Dhamma Nusati, Sangha Nusati, recollection of the triple gem, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, is very similar to that. So this is a way of doing Buddha Nusati, recollection of the Buddha, going to these holy places in India. Yeah, so this is kind of the idea. We're trying to develop something, bring up the faith, bringing up a connection to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And when that connection becomes strong and powerful, that's when you can get joy in these things. When you understand what they really represent, when you feel the Buddha is close to you. The Buddha is not so distant anymore. The Buddha is my teacher. wow, the Buddha is my teacher. Isn't that cool? The Buddha, the greatest spiritual marvel in human history, is my teacher. Wow, feel so lucky. You make that connection with the Buddha, and it's much easier to make in a place in India because that is where the Buddha himself was. And so the Buddha says, find inspiration in these four holy places. The word for inspiration here is Sangvejaniya. And Sangvejaniya means kind of two things. It means inspiration on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is connected to the word in Pali called Sangvega. And you may know Sangvega means like a sense of urgency. Yeah? So there's inspiration and a sense of urgency coming together. And you feel inspired because of the connection that you're creating to the Buddha, both to his teaching but also to his person. But when you understand the Dhamma, you also understand the urgency of the Dhamma. Yeah, you understand, I actually have to do this now. I can't wait till tomorrow. I can't wait till after this talk. I can't wait 1 minute, but now is the time to practice this teaching. This very second, what is my attitude at this minute? Listening to this talk, I'm not sure if I like this talk, but what is my attitude anyway? This is kind of how you have to deal with this. So you get this feeling of urgency because you understand the importance of these teachings. And when you understand the importance, you know now is the time. And so this is this idea. And when you compare the idea that you find of Sangvejaniya, that you find in this particular part of the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, this is the sutta, the last sutta of the Buddha's life, when he kind of, as he was dying and as he traveled between Rajagaha and Kushinara, all the things that happened, this is where this passage is found I'm talking about now. When you compare this to the usual way that the contemplation of the Buddhanussati, is talked about in the suttas, you will see there is an important similarity between the two. In the Buddhanussati, the contemplation of the Buddha, they talk about the Dhamma Veda and Atta Veda. Yeah? Alang, you know? Yeah? No? Don't know? Okay. So now I'm going to... So, this is the Honorable Alange sitting over here. No, it was funny. It was last time I was in Singapore, maybe the time before, I can't remember, I think the last time. And I got really keen on this word alange, because alang in Pali means enough. And it occurred to me, we don't have anyone who's called Alang. Everyone is taking on the Pali name. It's not everyone, but some people are. No one called Alang, but it's such a beautiful word. Enough, right? It's a very Buddhist idea. Enough, contentment. And then Wilson obliged me by coming up afterwards and saying, yes, I will take on the name Alang. That was really cool. So thank you for that, Wilson. Much appreciated. Yeah, this is how you create friends with monks, you know. Simple, very, very simple people. So anyway, so I just asked Alang whether he knew these words, Atta Veda Veda. He said no. So because Alang, enough, so you're content, yeah. So you don't need to know. So that's fair enough. But you will find out anyway now, because it's going to happen now. Yeah. And so Atta Veda and Dhamma Veda, the important word is the word Veda, because the word Veda is connected with this word Sangvejaniya, that means inspiration. It means urgency. I just talked about before. It is related to that. And what Atta Veda, Dhamma Veda means, it means Veda. It means like inspiration. The word Veda is from Vijjati, which means to understand, but also related to the word Vedana. Vedana is feeling, right? In Pali, the 5 khandhas, you have the Vedana. And so it is related to the idea of feeling and understanding. And in English, the word that is most closely related to kind of you understand and you feel powerful emotion that pushes you forward at the same time is inspiration. You're inspired. You think, wow, that's really cool. You understand, but you also feel an emotional kind of push at the same time. That is what inspiration is. And so in the formula for the Buddhanussati, you contemplate the qualities of the Buddha. Yeah, Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho, the thing we just chanted now. Yeah, please think about it in English as well. What does it mean? Yeah, very interesting meaning to these words. And as you contemplate that, the Buddha says the Atta Veda and the Dhamma Veda arise. Atta Veda, I think Dhamma Veda first, Atta Veda afterwards. Dhamma Veda, or maybe not, can't remember now. Atta Veda. Atta is the goal. Yeah, so you have inspiration in the goal. What is the goal? The goal is what we're trying to achieve on this path. Yeah, it is any kind of happiness that we can achieve on this path, any kind of peace, any kind of samadhi state, and ultimately nibbana itself. Yeah, this is the atta. So you feel inspired by the goals of this practice, the purpose of this practice, because you understand that actually this is something really meaningful, something extraordinarily powerful and important in your life. In fact, ultimately, this is what life is about. Yeah, all the other stuff we're doing is just kind of filling time or kind of doing things which allows us to kind of do the practice through those other things, whether it's work or family. But this is what really matters, and everything else is very secondary. It's a very important principle that I really encourage you to think about life in this way. Put the Dhamma on top, everything else underneath. So if you are a doctor, yeah, or you are whatever job it is that you have, remember that you can do that work as a doctor or a teacher or whatever it is really. You can do it in two ways. You can do it mechanically as a job that you have to do because you have to make a salary, or you can put your heart into it. Yeah, okay, I'm doing a service for someone else. How can I benefit other people the most? How can I make something generous out of this job that I have? And then it becomes meaningful from a Dhamma point of view. Putting kindness, generosity, compassion into your work, it becomes very powerful. And it doesn't matter what kind of job you have. All jobs have customers. All jobs have colleagues. And you put these things into these jobs. Even if you are in the military, you have colleagues, and you can be kind to them as a consequence. So kindness is always possible. So Atta Veda, feeling inspiration in the goal, the purpose of the practice. Dhamma Veda, this is the inspiration in the Dhamma. The Dhamma is the teaching of the Buddha. The Dhamma is the source that allows you to approach the goal. Yeah, you have these teachings. Okay, this is the suttas. When you put them into practice, then the atta comes into being. Dhamma and atta going together. The inspiration in both of them come together at the same time. And so this is the same. These are the same things that we see in Sangvejaniya. Yeah, the inspiration that you gain in the four holy places. And now you can start to see that actually what that inspiration or urgency in the four holy places, what it does, it allows you to access the same thing as we do when we recollect the Buddha. Access the Atta Veda, access the Dhamma Veda, the inspiration in the Dhamma, inspiration in the goal. And once you get that inspiration in the Dhamma and the goal, then the path unfolds from there. The path then is you sit down to meditate, you watch your breath, you do the metta practice, whatever it is that you do, then it unfolds according to the way that the mind develops automatically. This is how the mind develops when this practice goes in the right way. You have these things, then the pamudja comes. The gladness. From the gladness comes the piti. This is the rapture or joy in the mind. From the rapture comes the passaddhi, the tranquility. From the tranquility comes the sukha, which is the bliss. From the bliss comes the samadhi. From the samadhi comes the seeing things according to reality. It goes a bit slower than that, but roughly that sequence. So this is a standard sequence that I talk about all the time. So I thought I will say it a bit fast so I don't bore you too much. And maybe some of you haven't heard it before, but it's a beautiful sequence, all about happiness and peace, all the way through. That is what we're accessing by going on pilgrimage to India. This is the idea. Does it sound good? Does anyone like to come on the next one now, having said that? Taking you all the way up to Samadhi as a consequence. That's the idea here. So this is what is the purpose of this trip? Gaining that sense of connection to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha in a deeper way. So how do we do that? On the pilgrimage, as when we went, there was someone who asked, what should be our attitude be on the pilgrimage? How shall we make that connection to the Buddha as we kind of move around from place to place? And sometimes it is not so easy to make that connection. Sometimes it is, as I mentioned already, noisy or many things going on or busy and all of these kind of things. And somehow you have to kind of drown out, not really drown out. I'm not saying you should be more noisy than everyone else, but you have to somehow turn your attention away from the noise and towards what is inspiring and what is powerful. So how can we do that? And the first thing that this was my idea. There's probably many things you can do, but one of the most important things is to go to these places with a pure heart. Yeah, so when you enter one of these holy places, you don't want to bring any irritation or negativity or anger with you. If you bring that when you go in, there's no way you will be able to feel the atmosphere. So you banish those stupid thoughts. Yeah, don't go in with those thoughts. And what that means is that when we go together on the buses, we try to be super duper kalyanamitas and friends together as we do that. And I was really impressed because we were quite a large group, almost 70 people. And basically, to me, it looked like everyone was friends. I didn't see everything that was going on, but it looked to me like everyone was being really, really good friends. And I thought, yay, what a wonderful thing that is. All different people coming together, yeah, and kind of working together in this way. That's wonderful because that creates this foundation for enjoying what is going on. So start off having a pure heart and not too many desires. Yeah, don't think about the shopping when you go to the holy places. It's easy to think about the shopping because there's all these people selling things everywhere, right? So it's kind of hard to get shopping out of your mind, but try to get the shopping out of your mind and focus on the holy places instead. And so this is number one, focus on the holy places. Focus on being there. Don't focus on get the defilements out of the mind. Have that sense of purity. The second thing, which also aids the first one, is to start to use your imagination to feel that this is where the Buddha was. All of these places are places where the Buddha was. We know that from history. So you start to look around. You see some of the features in the land that are the same features now that they were 2,500 years ago. Yeah, the places are the same, for goodness sake. It was very interesting when we went to Kushinara, for example. Kushinara is where the Buddha passed away. And there was a river next to it. And so I decided to kind of leave the whole group behind. I was very irresponsible. So I just went out on my own, left everyone behind. Bye bye, look after yourself. And no problem. People were perfectly okay with that, of course. So no problem. So I just left and I walked out and I walked down to this river and I followed along this river. And I followed it down until I came to a bridge, about maybe a kilometer or so. I walked down. There were people working in there, and some very poor people just living in this kind of plastic tents. And I was a little bit concerned. I don't know what they will do with a kind of monk from the West. Yeah, they look at me and maybe they think that I'm a kind of can come in handy for them. I don't know. Maybe I look like I'm carrying money or something. Yeah. But so I walked along this river. Because I was in Kushinara, and then I come to this bridge, and I walk onto the bridge. Be very careful when you walk onto a bridge in India, because India has the most interesting traffic in the world. Yeah, the traffic is a mixture of pedestrians, cows, horse carts, lots of motorcycles, trucks, cars driving in both directions everywhere. Yeah, there's absolutely no structure. So it's not like you can look to the right. Yeah, you have to look left and right all the time because cars come from everywhere and everywhere. It's really very interesting. So I went to this bridge and I looked this way, that way, this way, that way. Okay, run quickly across. Very interesting. So anyway, and then I looked up. And then there was a sign, yeah, and it said Hiranyavati River. Hiranyavati. I know this word. Where do I know it from? From the suttas. This is a word of the same river that you find in the suttas of Kushinara. In the suttas, Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha crosses the Hiranyavati River, then he walks the last few steps to the sal trees where he lies down to eventually die. It's like walking into the suttas. It's like, wow, it's still called the same thing 2,500 years later. Isn't that kind of great? It's this feeling of connection. It's like walking into history, walking in, and then you realize the Buddha must have been here. This is the river that he crossed. I wonder where it was. Was it over there? Where is the nearest ford? Yeah, ford is like rocks or whatever to help you cross over. That's kind of the connection that you make when you're there. And so you start to visualize the Buddha actually was here. This is where he walked. He was a human being of flesh and bone, just like us, living in this place. And so you start. And then when you go to the Mahaparinibbana temple in the evening, actually, suddenly it becomes really alive. The Buddha would have come up this way. Here would have been the sal trees. This is where he lay down. Yeah, the stupa was there. Wilson slash Alang. Alang, can I call you Alang? Yeah, Alang. I'll call you Alang. And so the whole thing kind of comes together, and then you can really start to feel these places so much more because you are really making that connection with the Buddha. If you just read the suttas and you have no connection to these places, you feel a bit divorced. It feels like a story. It's like reading some kind of ancient story of whatever sort, but you don't really know whether it is real or not. And suddenly it becomes real because the landscape, the names, everything kind of fits in so beautifully. And so this is the second thing you have to do when you're there. First of all, clear your mind of defilements. Then imagine, see the Buddha in the landscape. Yeah, understand that he was here. He was a real human being of flesh and blood, just like us, moving across the landscape, coming from the southwest, moving in this direction. Many, many places. I want to talk about one incident now. Many, many places in India where this happened. You see these natural occurrence, natural landscape being the same as it was 2,500 years ago. So this is number three is to read those suttas, that word of the Buddha that was spoken in that place. Yeah, so you have a vision of the Buddha. He was here, and for example, one place we went is called the Gaya Sisa, Gaya's head. And we went there, and we know that, well, this is where the Buddha came with 1,000 monks. Not sure how they got 1,000 monks into that place, but anyway, there's always a bit kind of hard to tell these things. But that's the story, and that's where he taught the fire sermon, right? And so you have this feeling of the Buddha was here because he was there. And then you read the fire sermon, knowing that the Buddha was there, trying to recreate, in a sense, the atmosphere of 2,500 years ago. So you give those teachings that were given in those places. Yeah, like, for example, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the setting in motion, the wheel of the Dhamma, is a natural discourse to talk about when you go to Varanasi. The sutta where Venerable Sariputta got enlightened is called the Dighanakka Sutta, 74 in the Majjhima Nikaya. Beautiful sutta. And that happened, that's a place called the Boar's Cave, the Sukkarakatta, which is just underneath the Vulture Peak. This is in Rajagaha, yeah? I'm probably inundating you with names now. I apologize for that. But the Vulture's Peak, yeah, a very famous place where the Buddha hung out. Just under there is where Venerable Sariputta got enlightened, according to the suttas. And imagine sitting in the same spot. So you sit down there. We've had a very short time at this time to talk a little bit about the sutta, and things start to come alive. The landscape is right. You get the feeling for the person. You read the sutta while you're there. Yeah, all of these things kind of make these things come together. And then the last thing, maybe not the last thing, the second last thing is then when you sit down, is to feel the place. Yeah, don't be in a hurry. Relax, sit down, enjoy. Just close your eyes. Don't watch your breath. Don't do anything. Just feel. What does it feel like to be here? And sometimes people are very different. But if you are a little bit of the intuitive kind, if you are the kind of person whose mind becomes reasonably peaceful, not too much chatter in your mind, then often you can feel the vibe, or the juju, as I like to say these days. Juju is the modern word for vibe. Yeah, it's kind of the hot kind of. If you want to be a cool monk, you have to say juju these days. You feel the juju, and the vibe, the atmosphere. Yeah, is the more conservative word. The atmosphere is just often so tangible in some of these places, especially where where it is peaceful and quiet and these kind of things. You can feel the atmosphere going back, and it's like almost like can feel the presence of something special in those places. So this is a very important part of it as well. Don't try too hard. Don't do anything. Just feel. And if you don't feel anything, okay, that's fine. Don't have to feel anything. Yeah, some people don't feel anything at all. All right, but maybe you will. And there were quite a number of people on this trip who had strong feelings. Some people were crying, yeah, because the emotions are so strong. It's like, wow, the Buddha was here. It's like tears come down your face. You feel this connection to something much, much larger than yourself, something that carries you along towards happiness, towards peace, towards enlightenment itself. You get in touch with that. That's extraordinarily powerful when you feel those things. So this is the second thing. Just enjoy, just relax, just be, yeah, feel the atmosphere of these places. And the last thing that I would recommend you to do when you go on this pilgrimage, which we did this time as well, is to make sure that you practice the Dhamma while you are there. And of course, the first thing is to keep the 5 precepts or the 8. Some of you kept the 8 precepts, and I thought that is wonderful. It's a really good idea. The Buddha praised the keeping of the 8 precepts. He said sometimes that, well, if you don't keep them, it's not good for you. Yeah, so please keep them at least on the Uposatha days. That's a beautiful opportunity to do that. But also, India is a great place to practice generosity because there's so much poverty here, especially in the north of India and in Bihar, the places where the Buddhist holy sites are, enormous amounts of poverty. So lots of beggars and poor people. And it's very hard not to get touched by seeing the poverty. Yeah, we come from very, very wealthy societies, all of us here. We are kind of used to such abundance. It was very strange. Yesterday, we stayed overnight in Bangkok before coming back to Singapore. And I just coming into Bangkok and the next morning being given breakfast, and it was just this abundance of food. It was much more than I could eat. And then in my mind was this image of the beggars in India. And I felt kind of awkward, right? Why is it that we have much more than we can possibly ever eat? Half the food gets thrown away in our societies. Is that what it's like here in Singapore? Lots of food gets thrown away from supermarkets and things. Yeah, it's terrible. It kind of, okay, it's gone one day over the kind of, the date, and people chuck it out, and it's still perfectly good to eat. And then in India, people are literally begging for their life. It's kind of really, it's actually quite hard to see that. And so one of the beautiful things to do is this is a chance to practice generosity. Yeah, see what you can do. See if you can connect to these people. See if you can give them something just a little bit at the right time. You have to be a little bit careful when you do it. Otherwise, you might get inundated with beggars. But if you do it at the right time and place, it can be beautiful. And so I can't give any money. Of course, I don't have any money. Everyone asks me for money. They think I've got money. Rupee, rupee, rupee. No rupee. Rupee, rupee. I said no rupee. Rupee, rupee. Okay, whatever. After a while, you just give up trying to explain you have no money. So, but one of the people on trip, she gave me these bags of sweets. Yeah. So after a while, I became this kind of Guruji. They called me Guruji in India. Sounds cool, doesn't it? Guruji. I thought, yes, Guruji. And so I was Guruji giving out sweets. And sometimes when you give to these beggars, it's not super nice because they're kind of this, that seems to be their livelihood. They're begging all the time. But at other times, you give to people who are poor. Sometimes I would just go along a road in the village and I would look at people and I would just hand some people some sweets. And you could see they were so, it kind of lighted up their day. Yeah, for them, these really poor people, to get some chocolate or a sweet or something was like a big deal. Yeah, wow. And they would kind of run off with the sweet in their hands. And there's something very nice about that because you feel that you're actually connecting with that country of India. It's so easy to be a tourist and kind of just float above society here. One of the strange things when I was there was this feeling that it's almost like we were living in a different realm for some of these poor people. It's almost as if these were a lower realm and we were a higher realm. We were like the devas kind of floating on the top. And these were kind of the bit like hungry ghosts almost, yeah, because they were so desperate, some of the starvation and things. There was this feeling of separate realms almost. But the moment you give something to them, the moment you create a connection between those realms, they were so happy. I felt so happy seeing them when they were happy. Yeah, and you can be all sure. I will probably use this in my meditation later on. Just the memory of that, giving something to them in this way. But they too will have a lasting impression in their life because they will remember this kind of strange monk from some strange place giving them some chocolate or giving them a sweet. And in the future, that will be beautiful for them. It will be a memory of someone who did an act of kindness towards them. And being given an act of kindness in this world is such a powerful thing. I remember the times as a child when people were kind to me in a special way. They have an impact on me. I remember those things even now, today, and it makes you feel really good when someone does something special towards you. And we create that connection. And when you create that connection with the people of India, first of all, I just gave sweets to the poor kids. Then I started giving out sweets to everybody. Anyone I saw in the street, okay, you would like a sweet? Old grandmothers and young adults, and everyone was so happy getting sweets, right? And you create that connection. That gives a second layer of connection to the country. One thing is the visualization of the Buddha. Another is creating a sense of connection to the people who were there. Putting your hand around a little boy who is following you along, yeah, giving someone a pat on the shoulder, and just generally saying hello to people, yeah. Everyone knows hello, yeah, hello, hi, hello, and, and that's kind of cute, and it creates that connection. So these are the things to do to make something out of this whole experience. So that is what we were doing. So what about the places we went to? Before I go on to the places, I'm going to. Oh, what is this? Okay. So I can choose water or coffee. So what should I choose? Okay. Also, this is coffee. Okay. So, wow, so many. Okay, good. Yeah. Mm. Uh, okay, that's good. That's better. Now I can carry on. So, so that is a bit of the background. Yeah, that gives you some of the ideas of how to kind of integrate and kind of work with the whole experience. Um, and so, what about the places that we visited? What are the most inspiring and interesting things? And kind of what did we do? So, the first place that we went to was Delhi. We went to the capital of India because Delhi is famous for this museum. The National Museum of India, something like that, a very nice museum, and it is famous for having the Buddha relics. These are the most authentic Buddha relics in the world, probably. Yeah, and the reason why we know that they are authentic is because these Buddha relics were dug out from a stupa in India. A stupa is the kind of burial mound, and the stupa had been untouched. Yeah, it hadn't been opened before, and so it had basically been sitting there since the beginning, since it had been built, a long time ago. And when the stupa was opened up, it was opened up by an Englishman who was the landowner there, called Pepe, and he opened it up. Samuel Pepe, I think his name was William Pepe, something like that. Anyway, and he opened it all up. He dug a trench across the stupa, and he found this box inside. And there was all kind of ashes and all kind of things inside. And later on, a secondary team said, actually, we should go deeper down because deeper down is where the really interesting treasures are usually found. So they went deeper down and they found this casket deeper down with the inscription that went something like, these are the relics of the Lord Buddha of the Sakyans. And that inscription was done in letters that are called Brahmi characters. And these can be dated depending on the shape of the characters and these kind of things. And so these were by the greatest, they're called, what are they called? Epigraphists and all that. people who study these kind of things date it to the Ashokan period. So this was probably laid down around Ashoka, maybe even a little bit earlier. Yeah, so this has been sitting in the ground for 2,300 years, waiting for this Englishman to dig them out. So he dug them out, and he did the right thing and kind of ensured that they were kept in the right way. And now those fragments, those bones, yeah, are in the museum in Delhi, probably the most authentic relics in the whole world. And of course, many people go there. Yeah, they go to hang out there just like we did. And that was a very powerful and beautiful experience to go to that museum. Strangely, the museum is more peaceful than many of the holy places in India. Yeah, because the museum, okay, everyone goes there to watch things. They don't go there to kind of chant and do whatever. And so we went into this room and we sat down. First of all, you look at the relics. Lo and behold, they are bones. Yeah, they are bones, bone fragments, as you would maybe expect to see, right? So again, it makes that human connection instead of some kind of relic which is crystallized, which kind of people say, oh, it divides and it's super normal, all this kind of thing. Actually, it was very normal. There was nothing really super normal about it. And when things are normal, it is much easier to create a connection than when things start to get super normal. Super normal, that's when it becomes like a bit like God. And when it becomes like God, it's very difficult to make a real connection because God is by definition different from us. But when you see bone relics, when you see that this was a real human being, you start to make again that connection with the Buddha. He was a real human being. These are bones. Yeah, there's nothing kind of really out of the ordinary here. And then you sit down in that room, and there were people in that room from everywhere around the world. There were some Sri Lankan monks there. There were some Chinese monks from Taiwan, maybe, something like that. Not sure exactly where they were from. And so a variety of people, and everyone were just sitting down quietly and enjoying the atmosphere in the room. Yeah, and it was a beautiful atmosphere in that room. To me, this was one of the highlights, just sitting there and enjoying the atmosphere. First, we sat down for a while. Then I wandered around a little bit to see the rest of the exhibits. And I realized the atmosphere in that room is much more interesting than all the exhibits. I came back to the room again and sat there a bit more, just to feel kind of the feeling in the room. So this is kind of what it is about, yeah, feeling the feeling, having a sense of who the Buddha was. And this is what happened in Delhi Museum. And I was thinking to myself, is it right that relics should be kept in a museum? Well, first of all, it was, as I mentioned, quiet, yeah, so that is kind of a positive. And then I realized that in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha says that the relics, yeah, the stupas that are built over the relics of the Buddha should be built at the crossroads. The crossroads is the place where people come. Many people travel. That's why it's called the crossroads. Yeah, people come from all directions. And so the reason is that many people get access to them. So rather than having relics kind of tucked away in some private collection or maybe even in a monastery far away, having them in a public space can be quite effective. And then all people coming together like this. So I don't think it is necessarily too bad, especially when the atmosphere is as good as it was in this particular museum. So this was the museum in Delhi. Then we traveled from there, we traveled to Agra. What did we do in Agra? Did we see the Taj Mahal? No, we had lunch in Agra. We avoided the Taj Mahal, yeah, so we can be very proud of us. We just had lunch because we have to eat. So we avoided the Taj Mahal because Taj Mahal is like, it's like worldly, yeah. It's kind of nice, but it's not the kind of thing for a pilgrimage, really. So we didn't go there. So we can now be proud of us that we kind of really did the right thing, yeah. And then we went to Sankasa. Sankasa is the place where the Buddha supposedly, I say supposedly, came down from the heaven of the 33 after teaching his Abhidhamma to his mother. I always felt really sorry for his mother having to hear the Abhidhamma, to be honest. Imagine the only teaching you get is Abhidhamma. I mean, so What was Sankasa like? I would never recommend you to go there. That's what I would say. It was not very inspiring. It was a very kind of dry place, in my opinion. Didn't have any spiritual connection, at least not for me, maybe for other people. And then from there, we went to Savatthi. Is that right? Yeah, Savatthi was the next one. And Savatthi is actually quite nice. Savatthi is, that's where the Buddha stayed the most of the time, yeah, Anathapindika's monastery, the Jeta's grove. And so you have the feeling there, you have kind of the Buddha's kuti. I don't know if it's kind of changed, obviously, a lot since the early days, but the place is sort of there. And so you have the monastery there. It is kind of in the countryside. There's no real towns nearby. So it's kind of peaceful and nice. And then you get the feeling. You can see the Savatthi, the city or the town, is about 1 kilometer away. And so you get this feeling for how the Buddha would have walked from the monastery to the city. And then you can walk the same road now. The road is still open. And you can walk between these large ramparts, these walls of earth that are still there encircling the city. Yeah? And you can walk through those. And then you're kind of entering like the Pindabat route of the Buddha, yeah? Entering the same route, following along. Yeah? And so that's kind of really, really nice. And because it's a large grove, you can sit down and meditate. Of course, there's going to be a lot of competition there for your attention, like people giving Dhamma talks left, right, and center, and chanting going on, all of these kind of things. But the atmosphere is still quite nice. Yeah, this is in Savatthi. So we go to Savatthi, and I would recommend you to go there. If you go to India, we did a few other things there as well, but no need to mention those. Then we went to 𝐶𝐴𝑝, which is where the Buddha grew up, yeah, in his youth and these things. So that was okay, nothing too special, except that it's a chance to kind of look at some of the suttas, what the Buddha's to be, what his life was like before he decided to become a monk. Then we went from 𝐶𝐴𝑝 to Lumbini, is where the Buddha was born. Lumbini, there's an Ashokan pillar there, Ashokan pillar saying, here the Buddha was born. And that is actually quite interesting, because that is a quote from the suttas. Yeah, Idda Bhagavato Jato is the suttas. And here, it's something similar here, Idda Bhagava something. I can't remember the exact text, but it's almost the exact same text, except there's a slightly different use of language. So this is basically a quote from the suttas. The first quote from the suttas after the suttas in recorded history. Yeah, this is the first kind of physical quote we have from the suttas. Is this one on the pillar, Ashokan pillar in Lumbini? Yeah. And so Lumbini is quite okay, yeah, quite very, very busy again. Lots of people, lots of large number of Tibetan monks, lots of Tibetan monks everywhere. They're kind of all crowding these places because they live in India. And because they live in India, these are the natural places for them to go. So you find lots of Tibetan monks there. So Lumbini was okay. It doesn't have a very great power to it because the Buddha was born. He wasn't the Buddha yet. And so it was just okay. So he was born here. So then from Lumbini, we went to Varanasi. No, Kushinara. Kushinara first. I already mentioned Kushinara before, where the Buddha passed away. And that is, for many people, a very powerful place. It's a very ambiguous kind of place. It's ambiguous because, on the one hand, this is where the Buddha died, yeah? And you read the suttas and you see how people grieved at that time when the Buddha died. It's really, I pointed out on the trip how amazingly this is described in the suttas when people grieve, yeah, the way they grieved in ancient India, they were kind of falling onto the ground, they had feet in the air, rolling back and forth, holding the tummy and crying out, "Oh no, the I in the world has disappeared." Yeah, it was like grief of the highest caliber. It was really the super duper grief. And so on the one hand, people were grieving because the Buddha had passed away. But on the other hand, the parinibbana is also an expression of the highest happiness. Yeah, it is the final ending of life for the arahant. When the arahant has already obtained awakening a long time ago, and now he gives up that final five khandhas and disappears once and forever. So at the same time, it's a place of grief. At the same time, a place of happiness because it shows the ultimate purpose of the practice of this path. The ending of all suffering is what this is about. So it's kind of ambiguous, yeah? And we are now so far removed from the time of the Buddha, it's hard for us, we can't really grieve anymore. Maybe we can grieve a little bit. I wouldn't recommend it. But at least we can have that joy in the fact that the Buddha, here is where the Buddha finally was allowed to let go. He didn't have to teach anymore. Yeah, yay! No more difficult disciples asking difficult questions. Yeah, it's kind of imagine the dukkha for the Buddha having to answer all these questions all the time. And it's kind of, I always felt really sorry for the Buddha because you read the Vinaya Pitaka or you read the suttas, and the monks would come to the Buddha and say, "Oh, how long should my nails be before I have to cut them?" Yeah, and this is not what Buddha, the Dhamma is about. But so he answers all of these questions very patiently. Yeah, that's why these books are so long, because there's so many questions and things going on in there. So the Buddha probably quite happy with that. He had established the Dhamma in the world. The Dhamma would look after itself. It would roll on in the world according to the Dhamma Chakka Pavatana, the rolling on of the wheel of the Dhamma. So that was Kushinara, and that's where I saw the river as well. And then there was a few other things happening on the way, but these are kind of the main events. We went from there to Varanasi, to Saranath, which is where the Buddha set in motion the wheel of the Dhamma. Yeah, and this is quite nice, in my opinion. A beautiful park. And you have this kind of grand stupa where, again, which commemorates the place where the Buddha gave the discourse to the first five disciples and where they became enlightened. Yeah, that's kind of awesome. This is where the Buddha came. He came from that direction, roughly. Walked this way. He sat down here. And this is where the five disciples sat down. And then they listened to the Dhamma. Listen to the Dhamma Chakkapavatana Sutta. And at the end of that sutta, Kondanya becomes a stream enterer. And when Kondanya becomes a stream enterer, the Buddha says, Aho vatabo anyasi vatabo kondanyo, anyasi vatabo kondanyo. Wow, Kondanya understands. Kondanya understands. Vatabo is like an exclamation of amazement. And the Buddha has discovered that the Dhamma is effective. It is possible to transmit this very profound teaching and make other people realize the same thing. Remember, the reason why the Buddha almost decided not to teach was because he thought it would be too difficult to transmit this teaching. It's impossible for anyone to understand. How can anyone understand something so profound? Giving up the sense of self, the whole world clings on to the sense of self. How can we get everyone to give it up? Impossible. Okay, I'm just going to relax. And then Brahma Sahampati comes and says, "Oh, please, Venerable Sir, please teach the world out of compassion. There are beings out there with little dust in their eyes." And then the Buddha surveys people and sees that there are people with little dust in their eyes. And then he says, "Okay, I will, let's do it." Yeah, something to that effect. He doesn't literally say, "Let's do it," but you know what I mean. And then the whole thing starts. And that is where you are sitting now, yeah, when this happens. And so usually I challenge people. I say, "Okay, now I'm going to read out the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta." We didn't do that on this trip, but usually we do. And let's see if it has the same effect on you. And, usually, actually people enjoy it. That's what matters, right? People enjoy it, they get inspired. That's what the whole purpose is. The purpose is not to kind of create lots of sotapannas. It would be great if that happened, but we have to be realistic. So Varanasi was very, very nice and very kind of inspiring. And that was the main thing there. And then we traveled on from there to Vaishali, where the Buddha spent lots of rains retreats. That's where the Ratana Sutta was spoken in Vaishali, and many other interesting suttas. it's okay. It doesn't. It's not, to my mind, super powerful place. It's not one of the four holy sites. So far, we have seen three holy sites. And then we went from Vaishali to visit Nalanda, the great university in India, which is kind of spectacular in terms of ruins. But and it's kind of nice. You can sit there and do some meditation probably as well if you want to, but it's not one of the holy sites. And I must admit, I'm always a little bit down on these educational institutions because here all the monks lived very close together and they were mostly studying and they were getting into various, really kind of profound stuff, the sort of stuff that you can argue about endlessly, the sort of stuff for which there is no real solution, there is no final point when you are satisfied. And so to me, Nalanda is a little bit like the downfall of Buddhism, unfortunately. That's how I tend to look at it. Even though it is spectacular to see, in terms of Dhamma and practice, it's a little bit on the way down already at that time. Okay, nice to see, but move on. Next one, Rajagaha. Yeah, so we went to Rajagaha. Rajagaha is much more interesting. So when we came to Rajagaha, we went to the usual places. First place we went to was what was the first place we went to? Was it Vulture's Peak? Or was it Vulture Peak, right? We went to Vulture's Peak first. That was early in the morning. We went, that's right, not, yeah, early in the morning. So we got up early. We went there before sunrise, even before dawn. Sat down in the Vulture Peak. And the Vulture Peak is kind of outside of the town, outside of Rajgir. So when you sit down there, it is quiet. Yeah, you can hear a few buses using the horn in the distance because every car in India uses the horn to the maximum. So you got bound to hear a few horns, kind of the maxing out on the noise. But it's kind of far away. Yeah, it's not, and also not so many cars that time early in the morning. Yeah. So sitting there on the Vulture Peak, looking down, just seeing trees, just seeing the hills, everything is quite barren. You get this feeling of seclusion from the world. Yeah, this really nice feeling. Yeah. And you close your eyes and you just feel the atmosphere on Vulture Peak, knowing that this is where the Buddha sat, knowing that when the 𝐵𝑢𝑑𝑑𝑑𝑡𝑒, just over there, yeah, that is where he gained awakening. Yeah, so many amazing things happen on this Vulture Peak. And then you close your eyes and you try to feel the atmosphere. And that to me was one of the most beautiful places because it felt like probably what most of India felt like at the time of the Buddha. It was like this. It was peaceful. There wasn't much going on. And this is what it felt like at this time. So I really enjoyed the Vulture Peak. I enjoyed the Delhi Museum and Vulture. To me, that were probably the two highlights on the whole trip. Yeah, so because it was easy to feel the kind of the atmosphere, more difficult in some of the other places. So Vulture Peak, then Boar's Cave, and then walking down, and then in the afternoon we went to the Indasala Guha. Yes, yes. Went to the Indasala Guha, and this was kind of really exciting because the Indasala Guha is a place where almost nobody goes. And so we had to negotiate with the travel agents or the travel people who were looking after us and say we would like to go to the Indasala Guha. And they said, oh, we don't know how to get there. How can we do this? And so they made a few calls and figure out the way of getting there. And so then we had to kind of get off the bus and get into these little tuk-tuks. And we had to go on this road that was kind of really bumpy, kind of dung, 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 and going all the way to the Inda, to, as far as we could go. And then we had to get out of the tuk-tuks and we had to walk. It was a nice road to walk for a while. And then it went onto a little path, and then the path became more and more steep until it was basically almost vertical, and you had to kind of cling on and kind of walk through, and it passed this kind of area. And so at that moment, I thought, this is the last time I will be invited to lead a pilgrimage to India. That's what I thought at that point. But it turned out everyone was such good sports. Yeah, even Eiling over here. I thought Eiling, she's not going to forgive me for this, but Eiling was a good sport. She came along and traveled all the way. That was wonderful. And some of the other even older people actually came through there. It was just marvelous. Everyone really enjoyed a bit of adventure, yeah. And so we went through this kind of steep phase, and we had to kind of cross a dam, and then we had to walk up a steep hill on the other side. And then you started to feel this was really desolate, really, really far away. There was like no people, nothing, yeah. Maybe there were snakes, but certainly no people. And it was this feeling, this really feeling of this desolate place far away. And then at the very last bit, it was like I could see there was a big cave there. I could just look up and saw. I went first. I don't know. I must have had some kind of inner compass because I just walked straight to the cave without knowing where it was. And the guide was way behind me. I was kind of leading the way up the hill, even though I had no idea where I was going. But somehow, ding, went straight there. I looked up and I saw the cave up there, and you had to kind of climb up 2 or 3 vertical meters pretty much to get into the cave. I thought, no, that's too difficult. But then the guides came and said, of course you have to go up there. Yeah, we take people there before. And then we all went up to this cave. And this cave was like this quite a deep cave. The opening was maybe 5 meters high by 5 meters wide. And it went in maybe 20 or 30 meters. Yeah, large, large inside. And then inside the cave was another cave inside the main cave, like a little corridor. And you walked in there and you could hear the screeching of bats. Lots of bats in there, yeah? And they had the flashlights I showed, and you can see the flats were kind of fleeing, going even deeper into the cave. And then one of the young women on the trip, yeah, she's one of these very daring people. She wanted to go in and see all the bats. And we said, maybe best not to go in there. We don't know what kind of diseases these bats have, so be careful. So that was really quite spectacular. You could sit there, very, very quiet again, very peaceful. It was a bit difficult because the ground was very uneven. It was hard to get a really good feeling for it. We did a little bit of meditation in the Indasala Guha. This cave is where the Buddha taught Sakka, the ruler of the gods. Yeah, the very famous Sakka Panya Sutta, the questions of Sakka, that was taught right there. And very interesting sutta, very nice. I would really, I think I have taught parts of it here before, but the very interesting questions that the god Sakka teaches the Buddha. But I was kind of, still, it was amazing how everyone followed along. And what also is amazing is to think that the Buddha would have stayed in this cave. Yeah, he too would have walked up somehow this path. I don't think he would have stayed there for too long because it would have been quite inconvenient. You had to walk very far to get your daily alms food and these kind of things. But the Buddha too would have stayed in this extraordinary place. That was the Indasala Guha. So if you want an adventure, and then next time you can check out the Indasala Guha. And then the next day we went to the famous Sakka, the Satapani cave. And the Satapani cave is the cave where I'm about to eat the microphone over here, so be careful. Satapani cave is where the first council was held. Yeah, so we went there. On the way up, you have the kind of the baths and all the kind of, that's also very nice. And then on the last day, we went to Bodh Gaya. Yeah, so then we left from there, went to Bodh Gaya, and went into Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya is an extraordinary place in so many ways, but it's very touristified now. The temple that is there is a very, very beautiful temple, an extraordinary temple actually, and it's quite unique as a Buddhist temple. It is kind of this temple with a spire, in a sense, goes up. Lots of Buddha statues everywhere, lots of artwork, very, very beautiful. And it's nicely lighted up. And then there's more people in Bodh Gaya than any of the other holy places. Lots of people from everywhere, lots of noise, lots of rituals, lots of chanting, lots of all kind of stuff. And we thought if we go there really early in the morning, then it will be quiet. So we lining up before it opened up. It opens up at 5 a.m. I was in the line on the second day already 10 to 5 or something. Didn't make any difference. Still same noise level. Yeah, 5 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. So, but still, it's worth a visit. It's kind of extraordinary. And while we were in Bodh Gaya, we did one excursion to a place called Gerpa. That was kind of interesting, which was 2 hours drive. So we had to rent these special cars, four-wheel drives, and we went off to this place called Gerpa. Gerpa, it stands for Guru Pada, the foot of the Guru. And so Gerpa is this kind of mountain, yeah, 200 meters high, 1,680 steps to walk up. And this is the place where Venerable Mahakassapa is supposed to have stayed. And there's an interesting story behind this. I'll just finish off this story and then we can have a bit of Q&A afterwards. The story is that in his old age, Venerable Mahakassapa stayed on this mountain, yeah, and this is where he actually ended up dying. But one of the interesting things about Mahakassapa is that in his young, early years, he is the only monk who exchanged his robe with the Buddha. Yes, he had a nice robe. The Buddha's robe was not so nice early on, so they exchanged robes. So the Mahakassapa essentially had the Buddha's robe. Yeah, no one else had the Buddha's robe. And so then when he came onto this mountain, he stayed there. When he died, the story is he was swallowed up by the mountain. And he's still now waiting inside that mountain, swallowed up, waiting to come out again. He's waiting for Buddha Maitreya to arise in the world. And when Buddha Maitreya arises in the world, he will emerge from the mountain with the robe of the Buddha, offer that to Buddha Maitreya. That's the story here. So that's the mountain we went to. Yeah, really kind of this far away place, which fits very well with the idea of Mahakassapa, a very ascetic person, that he should live on a far away mountain high up. Fits very well with the idea of who he was, and that was the last place that we went to on this pilgrimage. So. That is the idea of going on the pilgrimage to India. So everyone will have, I think, slightly different outcomes and slightly different things that inspires them. But the idea is to kind of get in touch with the Buddha. And when you get in touch with the Buddha, you also get in touch with the Dhamma, because these are the same things. And when you get in touch with the Buddha and the Dhamma, you also get in touch with the Sangha, because all of these things are basically the same. So that is the purpose of these things. So, okay, that's it. Yeah. So maybe we can have some questions if you like. So if you want to ask any questions or bring up any points, please feel free to do so.
This photo that went viral up in the Sala cave.
In the Sala cave, yeah.
Yeah, it was a sunset soon. And that's the cave where the bats all flew in, right inside the cave. So we took a photo there. And she gave you some? Oh, okay. We just gave him a few photos last minute. So yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. This is the one, the crack. The Brahma
Gerpa?
Yoni.
Brahma Yoni, I forgot about Brahma Yoni. Okay. No, I did mention that briefly. Yeah.
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 They went through the crack between the crevices.
No, that's not Brahma Yoni, that's Gerpa.
Is it?
Gerpa.
Oh, Gurupa. Yeah. Gurupa Hill.
Yeah.
Gurupa Hill. That's the scary one. 1,680 steps. Okay, that one I didn't go. Left the young ones to go.
Yeah.
That's the Mahaparinibbana place at Kusinara. One of the few places that we could take a group photo. Oh, this is a walk through the forest. Walk through the forest. We just followed Ajahn.
This is in Savatthi, is that right?
Savatthi.
I
think so.
When we walked from the Jetavana to the two stupas, you walked to the stupas, what's it called, the Angulimala stupa and the
there was quite a bit of a walk, right?
Yeah.
John.
Yeah.
And that's the
Mahaparinibbana temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we just sent him a few to show the one that went viral. Okay, any questions?
What other places we should go to that we didn't go to? Are there any places we should go to that we didn't go to? Are there places we went to that we shouldn't have gone to? Gerpa?
Ajahn,
Yes,
can I
please.
ask you a question?
Question over here. Yeah. Yes.
Wait.
Yeah.
You see that the trip is very demanding.
Yeah.
Much as I would like to go,
Yeah.
I have always thought, dare not do it because,
Yeah.
arthritic knee, cannot climb, cannot go up the Vulture's Peak and so on. So are there places that are more friendly to elderly people who may have some, physical constraints?
Yeah, you would have made it. I'm sure. I can just tell by the way you stand. I would say straight away you can make it.
Oh, well, and when I climbing the steps or going down the step, that's where I have great difficulty.
Well, there are, we had a large range of ages on this trip, and I think the oldest person was over 80 years older. And they didn't come on the climb, so they left the climb. But a lot of the places are very flat and very easily accessible. The majority of places are flat. But sometimes we divided the group up. So some people went on the demanding and other people went on the more kind of even ground places. And so absolutely you can make it. I would have no doubt at all that you can make it. Straight away I would say, please come next time. So I think you'll be fine. Yeah.
Ajahn, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Not really about the pilgrimage, but about the relics that you mentioned. So you said that you saw bones. We can now see the bones of the Buddha. I've read articles about great monks after they have been cremated that people find crystals or some colored stones or whatever it is. How are these real? I mean, how do we? What do we take? How do we take it?
I think that the crystallization is just a physical process that happens when you burn them at a certain temperature. So if you burn the bones over 2,000 degrees, apparently they crystallize. That's what bones do. So I think it has nothing to do with whether they are saints or whatever. I think it has to do with just the physical property of bones. And presumably the Buddha's body was not burned at such a high temperature because they didn't have the technology to burn at those temperatures in those days. I think it's as simple as that. I cannot see any reason why, just because you are an arahant, why your physical body will somehow be different, still be the same, still it's the physical body. So so that's kind of my take on it. I tend to be kind of the boring, rational person.
No, I agree with you, because if not, there should be lots of these crystals for the Buddha's bones.
Yes, exactly. Instead of just being bones, precisely. Yeah, so that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
another question. I have a question about the relics that you saw. Do they include teeth, Buddha's teeth? And are they like regular human teeth? I'm asking this question because there was some controversy about the tooth relic temple and the tooth they found that look more like a herbivore tooth.
Exactly.
So I'm just curious whether you saw relic teeth.
We just saw bones. We didn't see any teeth. But the bones were human bones, and the teeth should be human teeth. And if they were not human teeth, they're probably not the teeth of the Buddha. It's as simple as that. And so I have heard that the tooth at the Temple of the Tooth in Sri Lanka is, as you say, it's a cow's tooth or something like that. It looks nothing like a human tooth. And so for that reason, I don't think it is the tooth of the Buddha. I think the tooth of the Buddha would have been a human tooth. Not a, So to me, that doesn't make any sense. So the more ordinary it is, the more likely it is to be true in my opinion. I get many enemies by saying these things, Yes, please.
Hi, Ajahn, thanks for your sharing. I just want to ask, what would you recommend for preparation before going for a pilgrimage? So like the few months leading up to a preparation, to a pilgrimage.
So I would recommend to read a little bit. Sometimes there is, what I did before this pilgrimage, I handed out some material to read before going. And you can read guidebooks. Guidebooks are okay, but they tend to be more kind of touristy kind of things about what to see and all these kind of things. More important is to read some of the relevant suttas to the places, because when you see the suttas, you can, and also when you read the suttas, it's not just the content of what the Buddha is saying, but it's some of the narrative content around the sutta. At such a time, the Buddha was staying there and there, and some of the narrative gives you some of the feeling for the places themselves. And as you do that, you have the background information when you go there, and then you can kind of integrate more easily what you see in India into the kind of sutta context. So that is very important. The other thing is that when you go, make sure that you go with a mind that, as I said, is fairly pure. Make sure you have a bit of time before you go. Don't kind of go straight away, maybe have a day's rest before you go, and then go to India with a kind of easy mind. Don't feel too stressed or too upset about anything like that. And so when you go. Third, I think it is advisable to go with someone who has a good understanding of the places. Probably many people, someone who can maybe inspire you a little bit to get a feeling for what the places are like, who can kind of explain the suttas a little bit and get into the kind of the mind, the mood, similar to what would have been at the time of the Buddha. So get someone to go with you. If you go by yourself, I know some people do that, it can be hard to kind of get into the right mood on the pilgrimage. So something like that.
Ajahn, apparently our Venerable Moggallana relics multiplied behind you.
Okay.
Ajahn, I got a quick question. So for the larger sites like Krishna, Deer Park, we know there's excavation, there's Asoka pillars. We know that they are more or less authentic. But what about the smaller places like Sujata Shrine? Like, how do we know they're authentic too?
What you have to do is you have to look at the archaeological evidence in places, and that will kind of tell you whether it is likely to be authentic or not. So Lumbini, there is an Ashokan pillar that says this is where the Buddha was born, and because Ashoka was 150 years after the Buddha, it is kind of fairly reliable evidence probably. When it comes to Sujata's village, then Sujata is not even in the suttas. Sujata is a commentarial thing. So what we do know, we know that the Buddha did have something to eat because he was so amazed that he wasn't able to attain samadhi and the jhanas and needed something to boost before he could actually meditate properly. So we know that he had something to eat, but whether that food was milk rice and whether the person was Sujata is much more uncertain. Yeah, so probably he was eating for quite a period because he had to regain his strength, not just one meal. That's kind of that's a bit flawed already. So probably there was many things going on, and also there's no archaeological evidence. There is a stupa there, which is said to be Sujata's stupa, but I think that's more like a rumor than a reality. There's no real archaeological evidence. So you have to, if you're going to you have to be a bit scientific about these things to make sure that you kind of don't believe in anything. The problem with many of the guides in India is that many of these guides, they have been educated at in institutions in India, and very often they don't make any distinction between commentaries and suttas and archaeological evidence or whatever. So they will tell you whatever they have learned without really being able to distinguish properly. And so this is this is kind of the advantage of having maybe someone like myself or someone who reads the suttas, that actually makes those distinctions. And then you have more ability to distinguish the really important things from the not so important things. Yeah.
Hi, Ajahn.
Hi, Arvind.
Hi. Thanks for that wonderful sharing. I have two questions, if you don't mind. Yeah. The first one has to do with Nalanda.
Yeah.
I think you were two minds about it, right? That there was a downside to what Nalanda represented. I was wondering whether you could elaborate on that a little. And the second question is slightly more personal.
Yeah.
I think you led a pilgrimage nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What's changed for you?
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So, Nalanda to me is, when Buddhism goes from being a tradition that emphasizes solitude, emphasizes living in the forest, emphasizing using the Dhamma to inspire you and to show you the way on how to live. You use the Dhamma to understand how to live. It moves from that to becoming a scholastic institution where the purpose of the Dhamma is no longer how to live, but is to philosophize and think about things rather than actually living the path. And of course, all that philosophizing actually normally doesn't get you closer to the truth. It often gives you further away from the truth because philosophy, there is no end to philosophy. It just goes on and on and on. And so to me, the Nalanda is really, it symbolizes what began with the Abhidhamma movement. The Abhidhamma movement is a philosophical movement. And I actually translate the word Abhidhamma as philosophy in my translations. And then because Abhidhamma is about explaining reality, explaining all the elements of reality and of the mind. So it is about creating a system, that where all aspects are explained. And in the same way, the philosophy that was taught at Nalanda University was similar to that. It was kind of philosophizing too much. Maybe not everyone. I'm sure there were some good practitioners there maybe as well, but that is kind of the tendency of these kind of institutions. So to me, when I go there, I tend to think more about the downfall of Buddhism, where people move away from the real purpose of the Dhamma and they move in a different direction. And So coming to what has changed for me, well, actually, first time I went to India was with the Buddhist Fellowship over 20 years ago. So that was the first time. And then I have been twice in the meantime with the groups in Perth. I think it was both times with Perth groups, I think. So 10 years ago was with the Perth group. So the number one that has changed is the roads are much better in India than they used to be. They got highways now. This kind of really, some of the places really fancy roads, just like anywhere else in the world, really. So that's one thing. There's been a lot of economic development in India. The beggars, however, in Bihar, they look pretty much the same as they did 20 years ago. Then not too much has changed for those, unfortunately, but maybe eventually that will affect them too, the economic development. Second thing, it's much more touristy than it was 20 years ago. Now everything is controlled. There's fences everywhere. You have to pay everywhere to get in. There's lots more people. There's more noise. There's more of everything. And so it has lost some of the charm that was there 20 years ago. You just walked straight into these places. Yeah, there was no guard, there was nothing. Sometimes it was a little bit too much of a good thing because these ancient ruins just got trod on by careless tourists who kind of would write their name into the nearest kind of brick or whatever. Yeah, I was here, Ajahn Brahmali. No, I never did that, but it's so. Yeah, so this is kind of the so in those days it was almost too accessible in a sense, and now it has become the Indian government has understood that this is a great potential source for income from tourists, so they're kind of making it very accessible for tourists. That's the downside. And so it is interesting. I must admit, one of the things that occurred to me while I was in India is, would the Buddha have recommended us to visit these holy sites in the present day? I mean, at that time he did, because there were still quiet places. There were places where actually you could feel the peace. You could get into the mood. You could actually, somehow you could understand the Buddha a bit better. But now, sometimes I feel a bit more like Disney World, yeah, than I feel like a Buddhist holy place. It's a terrible thing to say, but there's some truth to that. Yeah, there's all kind of things going on. And so I sometimes wonder whether the Buddha would have recommended it, actually. And that's kind of a fascinating idea. And I know this from Ajahn Brahm. He always says, forget about going to India, visit the 4 holy places inside instead. Yeah, first jhana, second jhana, third jhana. And after being on this trip, I sort of realized what he's talking about. He has a very good point about that. And so would I recommend anyone to go to India? I probably would still recommend. If you have been once, however, how many times to go, that's a different story. Once is probably enough. Yeah, maybe twice, but make it a long time in between the times. So that has changed. Third thing that has changed is that for me, it was much more powerful because I have changed as well. You changed, the places changed for that reason. And so you appreciate them more. You have a greater connection to the Buddha. Everything is more powerful the longer you have practiced the path, in a sense. And that was very, very, very nice. And so, yeah. Yes.
Ajahn, for giving a talk after the long trip. I wanted to ask, for you, how significant do you felt that it was for the nuns to be able to be with us for the pilgrimage? Because I'm not sure how often does this happen.
No, that was very. Thank you for bringing that up, because I did want to say something about that, but you often usually forget half of things you're going to say. So it was very nice. It was a very balanced group. We had monks, we had nuns, we had lay men and lay women. So it was very nice and balanced. And I thought it gave a really nice kind of feeling to the whole thing that we had nuns there, actually. And they didn't talk much, but talked a little bit. And the things that they said was actually very nice. Yeah, they spoke really well. And usually the perspective of a woman is going to be slightly different from the perspective of a man. That's just the way, because different background and different socialization or whatever you want to call it. And so for me, that was actually really nice. It felt really good. But my 2 fellow monks were also really great to have there. We had 2 monks. One is a monk who is originally from KL, so Chinese background from KL. The other one is originally from India, so he's an Indian monk. Venerable Nibbutto, Venerable Radha and Venerable Nibbutto were the 2 monks. And they were great. First of all, I consider them both to be good friends because we lived kind of together for 10 years at least in Bodhinyana Monastery. But they were also very useful. Yeah. So Venerable Nibbutto, the Indian monk, was useful because he could speak to the locals, right? He knows the lingo, he knows the language. He would kind of argue with the bus driver about going this or that way. So that was really good to have him there. And he would, when they swore, he would understand. He will tell us, "Oh, now he's swearing. Don't listen to that." And so that was really, really handy, and you could kind of negotiate with people. So that was actually really, really good. And of course, he also has some understanding of the culture as well. And that was helpful. And then Venerable Radha, the monk from KL, he's like engineer. He's like one of these really engineers. He loves engineering. And he's very good at it. So he set up our kind of system. We had this fancy transmission system. So when I would speak, I was on one bus, I would speak, everyone had a headset, yeah, and so they would hear my voice through the headset, even on the other bus, yeah, so we had two different buses, and then it would be recorded at the same time, and this whole thing kind of worked, yeah, or when we were walking somewhere, they could listen while I was walking, and they could listen to my talk. So that was kind of really nice. So it was very nice to have him along as well. And also both of them are really nice people as well. That's of course very, very helpful too. So I thought it was really, really nice actually, really harmonious. And the two nuns were great. They were really, really, really good. So what about you, Alang? Did you feel about having the nuns? Do you want to say something? Because you're asking, you may have some opinion about this.
Yeah, I asked about this because actually, I mean, it's a bit ashamed when I feel a bit ashamed when you mentioned about like going for the second pilgrimage, maybe having a bit of a space of time. Whereas this is my second pilgrimage this year. My first one was in January. And why I asked is because when I went in January, our pilgrimage was really just the monks with the laymen and laywomen. But I did notice that having the nuns around really brought a different perspective. And in terms of chances for, I think, the lay people to offer support for the nuns was also a very important chance for us, and I thought that was very, very nice. And for those of us who went, I think I don't speak just for myself. I think Venerable Sunyata, when she shared about her experience at the Mahabodhi temple, that was deeply moving, and I really, really appreciated it. Although I must say, when you mentioned about Venerable Nibuto, his jokes and puns along the way on the trip, I don't know how to feel about them. He says he puts the pun in the Punjab because he's a Punjabi monk. And wanted to share with Ajahn the last day when Brother Henry and I wanted to take a photo with him at the Bodh Gaya Hotel. He insisted on taking a photo next to the fire extinguisher because he said, what better than extinguishment? So yeah, it was really fun traveling with all the monks and nuns. Thank you, Ajahn.
Good, excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you for the trip, Ajahn. I thought the level of comfort for this trip is actually quite nice. We don't stay in the best hotel. Some of the hotel smells. The other group from Perth or from Australia, they were staying in 5 stars hotel.
Yeah.
So I would like to seek your opinion as to the level of comfort that we should actually be looking for, so that we can have the experience in its totality and best. That's the first question. The second question is, when will you be organizing a trip to Ajanta Caves?
To what? Ajanta Caves. Okay. Yeah, that's another interesting question that actually occurred to me as I was traveling. What kind of level of comfort is appropriate? And personally, I feel that something that is quite basic is actually nicer on a pilgrimage. To me, that feels appropriate. It feels like your emphasis is not on. If it gets too nice, your emphasis then starts to kind of move on to the sensual realm instead, because it's just so nice, the large beds and everything is kind of super duper. But it should be kind of fairly, to my mind, fairly basic is right. And even if the hotel's room may have smelled a little bit and the bathrooms were kind of overly humid and then kind of that's kind of okay, not a big deal, right? As long as there wasn't no one got sick and no one got these kind of things, it's good enough to survive. And that's kind of, so I personally prefer the more basic ones rather than and then we save a bit of money. And if you save a bit of money, give it away instead. Yeah, much better to give that money away to somebody and use it in a purposeful way rather than spending it on luxury here. So that is my personal feeling here. Regarding Ajanta caves, all I can say is that the future is uncertain. I cannot say anything more than that. So we shall see what happens with the future. So yeah, I saw some pictures from the other group. They sent some pictures from the Ajanta caves, and it does look quite spectacular. But it doesn't have the same, probably doesn't have the same vibe as the places we went to. Yeah. Okay, last chance. Time is running out for today. So, okay.
Okay, last question.
Ajahn, just now you mentioned about the 8 precepts. I just wanted to ask about the precept about sleeping on high beds.
Yeah.
Like, how should we interpret it as lay people in the modern era when, I mean, most of our beds are generally, honestly, quite luxurious compared to what they had in the Buddha's time. So, like, what was the intent behind the precept, and how should we use that in our practice? Thank you, Ajahn.
So that is, when you travel on these kind of hotels, you usually, some of the beds are certainly luxurious by most standards. So the idea is not to indulge in sleep. That's kind of the basic idea, because if it's kind of too comfortable, you just kind of indulge in these kind of things. I would say that I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Say that you're keeping 7.5 precepts or something. Yeah, you are, I mean, the way that a luxurious bed is described in the suttas is actually quite luxurious. It actually has a lot, the description is really kind of over the top in a sense. So even these beds, I wouldn't say up to that kind of standard. But it certainly probably is more than a simple straw mat on the floor, that's for sure. Sometimes you just have to kind of, do your best, because it's hard to kind of, anything else is hard. I mean, you could roll out a straw mat next to the bed, but I'm not sure if I would recommend that either. The other thing is that at the time of the Buddha, people were used to fairly simple sleeping, They often slept on the floor. That was kind of the common thing. Or they may have a bed, but the mattress was just a straw mattress, something like that. And so the level that you are used to also matters for what actually makes something luxurious or not. If you're used to a higher level, then luxury becomes even higher again. And so you want to make sure that you are reasonably comfortable as well, that you kind of don't sleep badly, at least, because that would also destroy some of the pilgrimage. Already we were quite busy getting up early in the morning, and some people, felt they didn't get enough sleep, perhaps, and that kind of thing. So already it was, kind of a little bit on the kind of ascetic side, maybe for some people. Yeah.
Okay, let's say 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.